Point of view. Point of view is kind of literal, right? Like it is where you are that you're viewing from. Like whatever point that is, right? If it's up here in the air, if it's down there on the ground, if it's right here at eye level, that point where you're viewing from is your point of view. So it has a big impact, obviously, on what your photograph looks like. So these are some just like standard images that I pulled off of the interwebs. So this is a basketball game, and this is shot. If you go and look at a basketball game on TV and sort of look for the photographers, right? Like, don't pay attention to the game. Who even knows how that works? But you've got some guys over in what I'm going to call the end zone. I don't know what it's really called, where the baskets are. You've got some guys like in the middle somewhere. And just think about where each of those people are and what the photograph is that they're going to get. So, right, so this is one of those people who is sitting or crouching on the sidelines with a long lens, taking an image, gets this. This is super interesting. This, if you look, mounted behind the backboards, which are glass and transparent, there are a whole bunch of cameras that are all remotely controlled. So basically, you know, somebody's sitting down there, and as this person comes up to make the shot, tuck, 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 right? And this, it's not a long lens, this is a very wide lens, right? So this is a wide lens which is able to get this big field of view, and you can kind of feel some of that distortion in what you're looking at, right, compared to this lens, which collapses that space a little bit more. So wider angle lens, more telephoto lens. This is sort of a little bit lower. This is certainly above. And that's something to think about when you're looking at a picture, trying to figure out where is it taken from, right? What am I looking down onto, right? What am I looking up at, right? If I can see the top of the fridge, then I'm taking it from above the fridge, right? If I can't see the top of the counter, then I'm taking it below the counter. So each of those things, just to pick two examples in my kitchen, each of those things tell you where that camera position is, right? If I can see the top of something, I'm above it. If I can see the bottom of something, I'm below it. If it and something else line up perfectly, right? Those two things that are lined up, that is sort of like where my eye is going. Here we go, above, right? So baseball shot up in the bleachers, down onto the field, baseball shot. This is actually really interesting. Look at like the ground plane, right? Look how flat that is, right? Here we're looking down onto it. Here we're really looking across it. This, I think, is shot out of the dugout, right? So he's sitting down there, or she, sitting down there in the dugout, making this picture basically on the ground. Right? This, again, Muhammad Ali, super famous picture, right? So you can see, just like this one, the ground plane is right there, right? So I am right at the level of the mat. I don't know, whatever that thing is that you stand on in boxing. The blood sponge. I don't know. And you can see then Muhammad Ali above looking down looks much more sort of like impressive, more, you know, just like this like big, heroic, dominant figure that we're looking up at him. Also, point of view thing, right? Like all these poor photographers over there, they didn't get any pictures that day that were good, right? This guy happened to be on the right side. It's just a crapshoot. But yeah, so that point of view totally changes it. If we were looking down from above, right? Just think how different that would be, right? We wouldn't see Muhammad Ali's face. We wouldn't have him like looming over. We would see whoever that is lying sort of spread-eagled on the ground. It would be much more about them and much less about Muhammad Ali. Miki Kohara. So she's someone who I have, cat, don't get my cable. Probably, I know I've mentioned before in Photo 1. I will probably mention her again at some point during this class. Japanese photographer, does a lot of beautiful street dish work. Her color is really incredible if you look at a bunch of her work. And she's working from a camera position that is around here, right? So she's like here, looking down, taking a picture, right? And you can tell, right? If you think about where eye level is and where camera level is, this is not up here, right? I'm looking sort of out at chest height rather than out from this head height. Obviously, all of our heads are in different places, right? Mine's a little lower than most people's. You may be way up in the air. You may be sitting down, like whatever's going on. But again, that changes how the picture looks and how we relate to the other people in the photograph. I would also point out that it changes how photographing works, right? If I'm like pointing this thing at you up here, right, that's a little bit more intimidating than if I'm not, right? If you can see my face and interact with that, or if I'm like, bowing my head while I'm taking a picture, right? I'm still taking a picture, but not having this like aggressive like face cannon, I think changes a little bit the dynamic of being photographed. It's one of the reasons why I kind of miss waist level finders. So opposite of that, Lee Friedlander, right? This is very much at head height, right? You being in the position of the person who is like stalker feeling like this person in front of them, right? I mean, this photograph, it's kind of about like the hair and the fur and the shadow, right? But it's always, for me, also felt like super, super creepy, right? You're like, dude, Lee Friedlander, like, come on. And it being at that head perspective, putting us in the role of those eyes being right next to that person, is important to how the photograph functions. Right, here we go, point of view again. This photograph, if it was taken at level of the table, right, we would miss all that stuff that's on top of the table, right? So needing to be up like higher than you kind of normally would be, pointing down at the top of the table, right? We can argue about whether or not that's kind of an awkward position. We can argue about like the angle of those lines going up and whether that's good or not. I'm like, but being above allows us to see the top of the table in a way that's really important, right? We can see what the food is, right? We can see what it looks like, right? We can see, the space between the things. We can sort of feel more the emptiness of this side of the table. We can see the dog. Reneke Dijkstra. So again, sorry, more nudity. These are sort of straight ahead pictures, but the camera position feels a little lower, right? Like it feels a little bit more in the middle. Chris Graves, right? So again, this is really right there, right into the eye, sort of accentuating that directness. With this one, I feel like, and again, I may be wrong about this. Maybe it is like up at normal level, but it feels lower. And part of the reason why for me it feels lower is that it feels like, and this may just also be the way that the photograph is functioning, it feels like it's having the whole body be part of the person, right? In this photograph, it's just the face, right? The face is the part of the person that we're engaging with. Yes, the person has a shirt on, right? But the person part is the face, right? Whereas Reneke Dijkstra's pictures are really about this like physical embodiment of being. I mean, not all of them, but those ones, to me. And so I think that having a slightly lower camera position, right, de-emphasizes the primacy of the face a little bit and acknowledges the rest of the body, right? In a way that this picture, which is no diss on this picture. It's not about what Reneke Dijkstra's picture is about. But this is very much like me standing here staring into the eyes of Larry Osan, who's a curator. Hiroshi Sugimoto. So these are, classic, iconic photographs, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't seen them already, now you're seeing them, you'll see them again. They are taken of various bodies of water at just like straight ahead with the horizon line right pointing in the thing, right in the middle of the frame. So very, very formal, very poetic, very calm, very still in a way. They're very abstract, even though they're totally realistic. And here you go, right? So that camera position of having the horizon bang in the middle, right, is hugely important to the formality of the organization of this picture, right? If this was like at an angle, right, you'd be like, Hiroshi Sugimoto, you fucked up, right? But it would be a very different, more like wild, crazy, blah picture. And it's not, right? This is a picture that is formal, divided exactly in half, half above, half below. They're really beautiful. If you ever get a chance to see them, there's incredibly rich silver gelatin prints. I think maybe there's also like some other editions of them. Anyway, Taiji Matsuo. So he has a series of works called Cell. And it's more in the biological sense rather than like a prison cell kind of sense. But they are all very tight crops from very large format images that are taken from way up in the air. So unlike Sugimoto, right, we never see the horizon. We're always looking down onto the subject. If you think way back to the sort of baseball field pictures at the very beginning, right, this is looking down onto the field. And one of the things that's really interesting about that is that, you know, sort of like the dinner picture where we see the top of the table, right, we're looking down at whatever surface these people are working on, right? They are sort of framed in this surface. There's no kind of visual escape from us to be able to see the horizon and get out of the image. It's just this, you know, solid green field with these people on it, this solid yellowy, I don't know what the hell that is, beach? Tarmac? I think it's a tarmac. Right, and so you can sort of lay people out on one surface and you don't have to worry about like what's beyond them, right? You don't have to worry about like the horizon and the trees, the horizon and the mountains, right? All you have is the ground plane. They're really just fascinating pictures. They also have this very interesting like surveillance feel because they are taken from above, from this very high vantage point. You know, there's something in that which again changes the way that we read the images. If you ever get a chance, it's a book, Cell. It's very good. He's a really interesting photographer. Most of his work is not like this. Most of his work, again, these are tiny crops out of big pictures. Most of his work is just big pictures. The prints are not that big, but they're incredibly detailed. They're very sort of like texture, right? So here's another one. This is from a different series, right? Obviously it's black and white, it's not zoomed in. But again, there is not that horizon. And so we're looking down at these mountains and all we see is the texture of the geography, right? There's no like ability for us to like visually get out of the picture, right? They're just, wish I could show you them, right, in person, but I don't own a bunch of pictures like this. Come on now. More Matsuo. Okay, that's the end of it. So those are some folks working with different kinds of points of view, right? Hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a sense of like, okay, like how do people use these things? What is it like, right? What does it feel like when I'm looking down from down up at something? What does it feel like when I'm looking from above down onto something? Right? You can take a good picture in any of these different ways, right? Hiroshi Sugimoto, right? He's like, bang, straight ahead, totally like level right at the horizon, right? Taiji Matsuo, right? Above, looking down, no horizon at all. You know, the Muhammad Ali photograph, right? Like from below, looking up, seeing this very looming figure. Mikiko Hara, right? Again, like a lower vantage point that, and you know, it feels less kind of aggressive toward the people that she's making images of, just because we visually are approaching them from sort of a more supplicant position. So those are some creative, interesting people to think about as you go and make some point of view pictures for yourself.